Okay, I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, October 28, 2020 special meeting of the Cohasset School Committee. As I state at the outset of every meeting, due to Governor Baker's declaration of state of emergency this Commonwealth, this meeting, this otherwise in-person public meeting is being held virtually. It's being streamed live on Cohasset 143 TV as well as Facebook. All committee members present, please indicate so in roll call. In alphabetical order, Ms. Caleri.
Present.
Mr. Kearney.
Present.
Mrs. Marr.
Present.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Present.
Present. Craig McClellan. All members are present. At this point, I'd open up to any public comment. That section of the agenda is, of course, open for discussion points that are not related to agenda items. So if you have questions, points of discussion related to the reentry plan, which is the sole purpose of our meeting tonight, please reserve those comments until we get to that point in the meeting. Let's give it a few seconds to see if there are any unrelated topics that anyone wants to raise before moving on. Okay, I don't see any. So moving on to the next agenda item is the superintendent's report. And I turn the meeting to our superintendent of schools, Dr. Patrick Sullivan.
Thank you, Chairman McClellan. Thank you, school committee leadership, and for everybody in the audience for being here. Today is a set day that we had created a special meeting, I should say, we had created to review the data from our first 6 weeks. One of the important factors that we considered in creating a reentry plan, a reentry roadmap, was the first 6 weeks. We know how crucial it is to look at those in a regular school year. Those first 6 weeks are crucial because you're creating those relationships, you're getting folks into the routines. And we did decide back when we launched the roadmap that we would take this day to look at the data and to make determinations about how things are going, what tweaks we can make, what changes we can make, and whether we can progress within the model, allowing more students to come in person, or if it was appropriate to switch in a different direction. So the presentation I'm about to show you, and I want to thank everyone for participating and taking a turn at the presentation, filling out the surveys. We have a survey we sent to all families in Cohasset. I believe there are over 400 answers to that. The exact number will be shown in a minute. We surveyed all staff, and I believe almost all staff, if not all staff, answered. We were able to do focus groups, and when I say we, it was Dr. Scollins and I did focus groups with our high school students, our middle school students, and we were able to do a focus group with our Deer Hill students. And that was really important feedback, and we'll be able to share that along the course of this presentation as well. So I'm going to share my screen now without further ado. Everybody see that okay? Great. You see it okay, Dr. Scollins? Just making sure? Okay, super. And I should say that I think what's really important before we begin is that this is a presentation of the data. At the end of it, I do have some conclusions that I've drawn from the data, and Dr. Scollins working with me closely on it. And I do have some recommendations. But what's essential here is that we get collective voice and that we listen to everyone and that we make a collective decision moving forward. And of course, the school committee plays a major role in that. So it is a rather long presentation, but I promise you, I'll go through it fairly rapidly, but just slow enough so that everybody can take in the information. And what I'd ask is that everybody holds questions until the end. We can then process what I have for the data here, my conclusions and recommendations, and then open it up for discourse, which I know there will be discourse, and I look forward to it, and I value the importance of that. So just to start here, clearly we're in a pandemic, and these are just some statistics. So these are data points regarding our cases, and you can see on one axis, and actually in the lighter blue chart here, you can see our new case count, and this is of October 26th, 2020. And then the line represents the cumulative confirmed cases. So if you kind of look at the blocks of the sort of the vertical graphs, you can see how throughout October, we've been moving up. Now, before anybody gets any high hopes about the 25th and 26th, as you get closer to the date of the 26th, those are incomplete data charts. So it doesn't mean there's less, it just means that it's incomplete data charts. But clearly you can see in the Commonwealth, and this isn't a secret to anybody, we've been upticking and we've been moving slowly but steadily up with the amount of COVID cases. And in our area, I have circled, rather clumsily, I should add, but I've circled Cohasset. You can see Cohasset is the yellow blot there that is surrounded by a sea of red. And I believe that's Norwell that's just under us, which is also yellow. Remember, yellow represents 4 to 8 cases per population of 100,000. So that's a daily rate of 4 to 8 cases on the average per 100,000. Now, the Massachusetts metrics are conservative compared to other states' metrics, and I think that's a fabulous thing because what it's doing is it's highlighting the importance and the vigilance for everyone to obey the social distancing rules, to follow all the processes that we're told to put into place before it does take off and become a major issue. And clearly, we're in a yellow. This is the first week of a 2-week period since we've opened school that we've moved out of the gray, or I call it unshaded, which is below 5 reported cases. But as you can see, the areas around Cohasset are certainly in the red. And even though it doesn't necessarily mean a large population of COVID cases, it does mean that our area is definitely experiencing an uptick and it needs to be noted of COVID-19. In terms of Cohasset, you can see this is our latest statistics as of October 21st, because it comes out on Thursdays now, that we had 7 confirmed positive cases in the town. I should say this is the town. And you can see the average daily incident rate per 100,000, which puts us firmly into the yellow. One thing of note, and I don't say this to excuse anything, our testing is going up. Last 2 weeks, we were in the low 400s of tests over 14 days. This particular 2-week period, we were at 613 tests. So that's a good thing too, because more people are getting tested, more people are being vigilant, and the rates did go up partially because of that, but obviously because of the reasons I had just mentioned as well. And then specifically Cohasset schools. As of today, we have, I shouldn't say only, we have had 2 school community members test positive. I had informed, and that was, last week and the week before when I had informed the community of it. These cases are not to believe to have originated in Cohasset Public Schools. There are no new confirmed positive cases at this time. So just a quick overview of where we are, where we've been, and kind of as we sit right now reviewing this data, where we are in terms of COVID and its impact on Cohasset and Cohasset Public Schools. Now I want to dive into the surveys. And the first survey I want to dive into is the family survey. So as you can see, 404 responses, and you can see the breakdown of where the families came from in terms of where their students are in Cohasset District. Pretty wide, pretty good spread, and I think a very good sampling of the populations in each school. So the first one I'm going to review is the data for Joseph Osgood, and it is a beautiful school. So some of the data around Joseph Osgood. The first question was, I feel my child is having a valuable learning experience during the in-person days. To set up what these numbers mean, and it's the same for each of these charts, except for the ones that I'll identify specifically. 1 is strongly disagree, and then 2 is disagree, 3 is neutral, 4 is agree, and 5 is strongly agree. Typical Likert scale. So you can see that the majority of folks, and I always look at where the 2 largest numbers are in the 4 and the 5, with some neutral, but very few are in the disagree or strongly disagree category. So the respondents from Osgood are saying that their students are having valuable learning experiences during in-person days. Gonna move, trying to move my bar here. There we go. That's not very good either. Tried to make it better. Can you all see my screen still? Okay, good. My child feels connected to his or her teacher. As you can see, 211 responses, and you can see that it trends towards the strongly agree and agree category as well. My child feels connected to his or her classmates when attending school in person. Very similar numbers. My child feels safe when attending school in person. And again, you can see, and this is what you like to see, it's up in the high numbers. It's, strongly agree and agree, which is great. My child feels anxious about going to school in person. So remember, it's kind of a reverse, because we asked if they do feel anxious, and the majority are strongly disagreeing that their son or daughter feels anxious. So you can see the numbers. On average, how many hours a day are your students spending on homework on an in-person learning day? So this is an in-person learning day at the Osgood. You would expect it would be low, and it is. We have, most people are saying less than an hour, a small percentage saying 1 to 2 hours, even smaller saying 3 to 4, and someone's getting 5 to 6 hours of homework, and I don't know who that is, but I'd like to talk to that person, because that shouldn't be happening. We need to help with that. If you could change anything about your students' in-person workload so far, what would it be? And the choices were, they would have fewer assignments, they would have more assignments, or workload and assignments have been just right. And what we like to see is what we see right here, with 69.7% saying the assignments are just right. And this is, again, in person. And then you do see a smaller percentage wanting more assignments, and a little bit larger a percentage than that saying they would have fewer assignments. So overall, we're, I think, hitting the mark on in-person workload. My child feels comfortable with the lunch experience when attending school in person. This was a much debated issue about what lunch would look like, and that is also trending towards the strongly agree. So most of the parents are reporting that their sons and daughters are, it's obviously 44.9 and 22.7, and there's a 20% that's neutral, but I don't view that as necessarily negative or positive. But most people, and I can understand that in this context, right? I mean, it's not the perfect scenario for lunch for anyone, but clearly they're feeling okay about it. So we did, ask some questions about lunch, some open questions, and some of the answers that we received kind of developed some themes for us. So in terms of suggestions to improve lunch at Osgood, most families presented an understanding that the social distancing required at lunch limits our ability to move students into more socially interactive situations, but some indicated a desire for us to try to create more socially active lunches. Is there anything that maybe the teachers can do to spice it up a little bit to make it a little bit more socially active? And then there were some comments about continuing to work regarding the food quality and food choice. And it wasn't necessarily germane to the pandemic, but it did come out enough that it established a bit of a theme. Recess. Again, you can see the same type of delineation. Most folks feeling that their child is enjoying recess, and recess is an important part of every day. A few not enjoying it, but you can see the trend towards saying that they're enjoying recess. Some of the themes about recess: most respondents mentioned an acknowledgement again of the importance of resource and outdoor play, and expressed thanks that we are providing a safe option for our students to engage in activities outdoors. A lot of comments about, thank you for keeping recess going, so important. They did advocate for more activities and sports at recess. That's something that we absolutely will look into. You can understand why we're trying to restrict that. More use of equipment, if possible. A lot of folks said, not sure if it's possible, and then the same thing for, our beautiful new playground structure. It's a bit of an irony that we finally get a wonderful playground structure, but we do have to limit some of the exposure to that to keep kids safe and in a recess situation. So this is about seating arrangements on the bus, and we asked that only parents, we asked that only parents answer this whose students do take the bus. And you can see that although it's not a large number who answered, people are feeling really comfortable. This is a trend all the way across the board about the safety happening on the buses. The buses are bus drivers are doing a great job keeping the students socially distanced. They've been very welcoming, accommodating, and it's very apparent in these surveys that the students feel very safe, as do the parents about their students on the buses. Again, some of the improvements, most responses mentioned that everything was going well on the buses. There was really not very many negative comments at all. If they were, they regarded windows, and this was the same with the Deer Hill. And if windows will be closed during cold or inclement days, this is particularly of a concern to our Boston students who obviously have a longer drive. And we're looking at some solutions to help them with that. The answer is they don't absolutely have to be open. The guidance says they should be open at least 2 inches if possible, but in really inclement weathers, we might have a few that are open, a few that are closed. We're doing the best we can with it, but if at all possible, we will be cracking windows to keep airflow at its maximum based on the weather. This is about morning meetings. Do they help my child feel connected to an adult? And you can see it's a bit all over the place. We didn't ask a clarifying question on this, but this might be something that Principal Farrell digs deeper into and looks at really maybe doing a separate question about the efficacy of morning meeting in connecting to the adult and why some people are having some differing opinions. It's not bad, it's just sort of splintered all over. And this is about remote. On an average, how many hours per day are your students spending on schoolwork on a remote day? These questions are a little bit misleading because, based on the grade level you have, you should have a different amount. But we still put it in there because we felt it gave an overarching thought on how much time people are spending in a remote learning day. And, if you look at the majority, it's 3 to 4 hours or I guess the next one is 5 to 6 hours. So it's been a full day for remote learning on the average for our Osgood students. If you could change anything about your students' remote learning workload, what would it be? And again, you can see the majority feel workload is just right, and about an equal amount feeling they would have more assignments or fewer assignments. So here are some themes regarding what we can do to improve the remote learning experience at Osgood. There are comments that Wednesdays have too much Zoom engagement for the youngest students. There was a definite theme in the answers that there was some frustration about the ability for their youngest students, mainly kindergartners, to be able to Zoom as much as the parents feel we're asking the students to Zoom. Some comments that there needs to be more synchronous engagement with students on remote days. Varying answers about the rigor of work. Some feel assignments are too much, some feel not enough, very mixed. More connection Zooms on remote days. There seemed to be a clear feeling about the need to connect with the classroom teacher. And there's a definite theme in the answers provided that there's a lot of pressure and responsibilities placed on parents of PK to 2 students to help their students succeed in the remote model. And those responses stress the importance of, if possible, providing more in-person days. So moving on to Deer Hill, another great school. You'll see this very similar data, actually. I feel my child is having a valuable learning experience during the in-person days. You can see trending towards the strongly agree. When we interviewed our students about this, because this was our first really student interview focus group, all the students interviewed, they were happy to be back in school and that they really liked connecting with their teachers and classmates. It was an absolute theme of how relieved they were to be back. They're a joy to talk with, by the way. My child feels connected to his or her teacher in the in-person model. And, that's really high percentages there of, agreeing and strongly agreeing. My child feels connected to their classmates when attending in school in person. And you can see it's also very much trending towards strongly agree and agree. when we asked them about that, the kids said, yeah, one of the things they love the most about being back in school is to connect with their teachers. They love their teachers, thought their teachers were fabulous. And it was really like an ad for Deer Hill School, to be honest with you, talking to these kids. They thought they were so happy to be engaged with their teachers and, you know, their classmates. My child feels anxious about going to school in person. Remember, this is now kind of an opposite question. So you have the strongly disagree is the leading. So most people strongly disagree that their child feels anxious. The second percentage being disagree. And you can see there are some, so there's some work to do, but the responses still indicate that most people don't feel anxious about they don't feel their children feel anxious about school. When we asked this, if they felt safe in school, every single student interviewed indicated they felt safe in school. And just as an overarching comment about all of the students in all of our focus groups, there wasn't one of them who said they felt unsafe at school. All of them said they felt safe and talked about it specifically as an important factor for them. On average, how many hours per day are your students spending on homework on an in-person learning day? And you can see less than 1 hour is the predominant answer. If you could change anything about your students' in-person workload so far, what would it be? An even higher percentage felt that, than on Osgood, which was high, felt that the workload and assignments in the in-person have been just about right. And if anything, maybe some more assignments. And that's what they said. The students reported that in-person work was helpful and not too much for them. They felt it was just about right. My child feels comfortable with the experience when attending school in person. And you can see it's obviously trending towards the strongly agree and the agree. Some themes regarding, that was lunch, sorry. Some themes regarding suggestions to improve lunch at Gerry Hill. Most families, it's very similar. They present that it was almost exactly the same data. Presented an understanding that the social distancing required at lunch limits our ability to move students into more socially interactive situations and to continue to work regarding food quality and choice. It was a very similar response grouping to the Osgood response. Our students said that reported lunch was not a concern to them. They actually engaged us in a discussion talking about how they actually like having their own space and that having their own space took away some pressure of sometimes having to find a seat with friends at a crowded table. They gave the example of a table kind of fills up and then they can't really sit there because there's too many kids around there anyway. So they felt like this kind of takes that out of the picture. They did acknowledge it wasn't ideal, but most of them felt pretty comfortable with it. I was impressed by that. My child is enjoying recess. You can see again, it's moving towards strongly agree. Some of the themes, most responses indicated an acknowledgement of the importance of recess and outdoor play, same thing. More activities in sports. The only difference between these responses on a whole and Osgood responses is, you know, that they wanted more use of the equipment. I'm not sure that Osgood said that. And this was, my child is comfortable with the seating arrangements and adjusting protocols when on the bus. Very similar in terms of data to Osgood. And again, a little bit about the windows. They did mention there were more indicators in this one about the concerns about the construction in town and the length of the ride. That's not surprising. There's been a significant amount of construction on Sawyer Street. I didn't see that in the data from the Osgood, but I did see it at Deer Hill. Morning meetings during, again, help my child feel connected. And there were 102 responses here. And you can see where it's trending. On average, how many hours is your student spending at work on a remote learning day? And again, this is, it does depend on the grade level, but you can get a sense for how long that parents say their children are spending. You can see where it varies here. Some 5 to 6, some 3 to 4. And if you could change anything about your student remote learning workload so far, what would it be? And the majority have said the workload and assignments have been just about right. Some say there'd be some more assignments, some say there'd be fewer, but still trending towards just about right. And when we talked to the students felt that the amount of remote work was appropriate, although some felt that the work was lighter than it should be. Some students indicated that they moved quickly through assignments that are advertised as taking longer. Could have been the group of students we were talking to. They were certainly go-getters. Some students expressed that sometimes they were confused regarding how to find assignments during remote learning. But overall, they said, remote learning was definitely going well for them. And that was the most important takeaway from it. Dr. Scollins, if you feel anything differently in these, feel free to jump in. I mean, you were there with me, so.
Doing a great job.
So some themes regarding the ways we can improve the remote learning experience at Deer Hill. This is coming from the family survey. Comments that there needs to be more synchronous engagement with students on remote days, more balance on remote days between synchronous and asynchronous approaches, how teachers are using the learning apps, mainly Dreambox, Lexia, the live Zooms and the asynchronous work. They felt that there's enough comments in there to make me think that parents really aren't getting the balance in some cases. More long-term and project-based approaches came out from the survey answers. Indication that teachers doing some connecting with families to prepare them for the week ahead with their children would be valuable to the families. So there were a few answers in this that stated that it would be good if, maybe a teacher did a short video about the week ahead, or maybe did some reaching out to the families to give them a sense for the landscape that's ahead of them in the week. They weren't negative comments at all. I just thought they were somewhat constructive, and there was enough of them in there to put in the themes. More consistency in terms of assignments on remote days. They did mention some lessons not taking as long as described. There were some answers about, students getting through work very quickly. That was kind of replicated in the student answers. And then the last one really being, oh, sorry, I have trouble reading my screen when it's on that. Oh, feedback. Really trying to increase the in-person instruction, but if not, then at least creating situations where there's more feedback on those remote days. And I should add, I didn't put it in the notes, but the students are also longing for some feedback during remote days. And we recognize the limitations of that and the difficulty in it, absolutely. But it was in the survey and in the focus groups. So now moving to the middle school, love this entrance. It's even better now with the having it be its own entrance with its own security and full administration. That's a good thing. Feel my child is having a valuable learning experience during the in-person days. Again, definitely trending towards strongly agree. Very good data. My child feels connected to his or her teachers. Again, you can see doing a great job in connecting with the students. My child feels connected to classmates when attending school in person. Again, trending towards that connection, which is great to see in school and in person. And I wrote down some of the quotes here just to put a little bit of a different spin on it as we get kind of some of the older kids. But all of the students felt that the in-person experience was valuable, and almost all valued the in-person experience over the remote experience, which you'll see is different than when we get to the high school, when we start talking about that. But some of the points were, I like it a lot better being in a classroom experience, so important to take a break from the screens and do hands-on activities. In-person is more interactive and we get to talk to classmates. I like the in-person time a lot. It is much easier to be in contact with the teachers and the students. My child feels safe when he or she is attending school in person. And you can see, absolutely trending towards feeling safe in school. This is the anxious question. So again, we're trending where we hope it would, which is they disagree that their son or daughter feels anxious in school. About safety, again, all of the students talked very explicitly about feeling safe when they're in school, really complimented their teachers on the protocols they're taking, the care they're taking, the processes that they're going through to keep let's face it, the middle school is a difficult age group for this, right? Because they're so socially inclined to gather, as are the high school students, but it's a real task for teachers to keep them separated. And I like to hear these comments that teachers have been really good to make us feel safe in school. Mask breaks are great. They could maybe be done slightly more frequently. So that was definitely, we heard that a few times, but it was done so in a very classy way. They were really complicated. Yeah, and I love this answer. It was very, I think, kind of indicative of what we got. I think that we could have some more mask breaks, but it depends on the class and the time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. Overall, things are pretty good, going well. That was the kind of answer we were getting now. But it did leave some feedback that maybe at the middle school, we want to take a look at where our mask breaks are. Are we doing enough of them? And what's the balance there? On an average, how many hours per day are your students spending on homework on an in-person day? You would imagine it would go up. It should go up from the elementary, and it did. We had more folks saying 1 to 2 hours as opposed to less than an hour, but those are still the most popular answers. If you could change anything about your student in-person workload so far, what would it be? Again, a very high percentage said the workload and assignments have been just right, with an exactly equal percentage of fewer assignments and more assignments. Can't make this stuff up.
Mhm.
So some of the focus group results were all of the students stated they felt safe when in school. Oh, did I mention this already? I did. The repeat slide, I think, Dr. Scollins.
Looks like it, yeah.
My child feels comfortable with the lunch experience when attending school in person. Again, this is where lunch is. That social experience is so important for middle schools, having been a middle school principal for many years, working in middle schools. So I'm not surprised that the numbers aren't quite as good here, but they're still, for what we're dealing with, I believe, trending on the right side. Some of the themes is that most families presented an understanding that it does limit our ability, exactly the same as in the other two schools. Same thing about food quality and choice. There were some comments about the time for lunch. Our middle school lunch is very early. It's about, our earliest lunch starts at 10:40. The problem we are having with that is that we have to fit in the high school lunches as well. So really you have, 3 grades in the middle school, 4 grades in the high school, and a limited amount of time to do it. It is a trick. It's not perfect, but most folks are dealing with it. All of the students interviewed understood the need for social distancing at lunch. Some students were enjoying lunch more than the other students. Some of the comments going well for me. Some kids are not lucky when they have to go to gym. So we do have some seats set up in the gym. Some kids may not feel included, but it's going well for me. Lunch isn't going that well for me because I'm not able to sit with my friends. That kind of hit me a little bit. I like that we get our own desk, but I wish they were closer together. I do as well, but we can't get them closer together. I like how we are still social distanced, but we can see and talk to people. So that's kind of where they were with it. This is about the bus. No, there aren't a lot of answers here. There are only, what?
8.
8 answers. So it's really a mixed bag, almost not a relevant answer set. And the comments were, most of them said they were well, but there were comments about the 6th graders who are supposed to be taking the bus, not taking the bus, particularly we're finding in the B cohort, the Thursday, Friday, our buses, which were supposed to be mainly filled. And when I say filled, of course, the maximum is what, 26 or so. So, or even 23, depends on if you have family members. That's not the case. But unfortunately, because they're signed up for the bus, it's not enough for us to open it up to everybody. We don't have enough bus space for that at the middle school, but it is something we might be able to explore as we move forward a little bit. But again, these 6th graders who live outside of 2 miles are entitled to the bus. So it's something we're right now working with their families to make sure they are taking the bus. And if they're not, please let us know so we can maybe do some more with our buses. During remote days, my child feels connected to his or her teacher, their teacher. You can see, trending a little bit more towards a neutral experience in the remote days. This is, again, a question that I don't think was that relevant because it is split based on, which would make sense based on the grade level they're in. Obviously, 6th grade should have less homework than what 8th grade. It just is the natural course of of matters, but you can see it's pretty split all over the place. Still good data to look at. If you could change anything about your students' remote learning workload so far, what would it be? Well, most are saying the workload and assignments have been just about right. You can see there's some feel fewer assignments, and a lesser extent, there'd be more assignments. Some of the themes, again, more about that synchronous engagement, but in this case, the comments were more trending towards it can be intense for some students. That kind of comment, like the amount of time that students are in front of a screen, we understand that. That would be a problem for some. It has to be handled with some sensitivity. We're kind of some growing there, I believe, as well, for all of us. There were some comments that the workload was too heavy, other comments that the workload was too light. Comments that the cohort remote days are more effective for some students than the Wednesday remote days because of the activities centered on a particular cohort. So I guess what they liked, basically what they were saying, some of the comments were saying is that on Wednesday, their student who might be in cohort A has to listen to all the assignments that were happening for cohort B. It was about 3 or 4 comments on that, so I put it in there. And they didn't like that, I guess. More feedback opportunities for staff to help students during remote days. Again, they want that ability to ask questions and get answers, difficult to come by. Several comments urging more in-person opportunities for students if possible. Focus group results on this. All the students interviewed felt that remote learning was going well, but some hoped for some adjustments. Here are some of the comments. One way we could improve is to make remote a bit more hands-on. It can be difficult with social distancing, but because you are on 7 Zooms a day, it is hard to focus. Maybe some group projects. We could maybe find a more consistent way to view homework assignments. There was some input that some of it was difficult for them to find in their Google Classroom. Moving to the high school. I feel my child is having a good experience during in-person days, and you can see it trending again towards the strongly agree. Very, very high percentages there. My child feels safe when he or she is attending school in person. Again, same trending there. My child feels connected to his or her teacher. A good percentage feel that way. My child feels connected to his or her classmates. A little more even, but still more up towards the strongly agree, and neutral category. It's all in person. My child feels anxious about going to school in person. Again, trending towards strongly disagree, agree, and neutral. Are some though, and just because something's trending one way doesn't mean we're not going to attend to it. It's just, this is about trends, data trends. On an average, how many hours per day is your student spending on homework? And again, it just gives you an overall idea about the building, because it is different for each grade level, but 1 to 2 hours and 3 to 4 hours was the most were the most popular answers. If you could change anything about your students' in-person workload so far, what would it be? Still 61% felt the workload and assignments have been just right. A few said fewer assignments, and a very small percentage said more assignments, which you would imagine in high school would be the case, in a rigorous high school. So that's what I would expect. Focus group results. All the students felt safe in school. All stated that they felt good about the protocols that were put in place. They all felt that in-person school was going well. Students did state, and this was a theme in both focus groups, not just one, and they were very different groups. Students did state that many of the in-person days are filled with assessments, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that was actually detracting in some cases from what they felt was an effective model in an in-person day. Several students mentioned they wish there were more interactive opportunities in person and less for a focus on assessment when in person. I think as a district, online assessments and what we can do with authentic assessments, what we can do for assessments that are going to be safe and viable is something we definitely need to support our staff on, and I think we need to work as a team on that. Students spoke of the effects their teachers have put, the efforts, their teachers have put in to make the learning experience positive. They were absolutely glowing about the teachers. My child feels comfortable when attending school in person. You can again see it trending towards the strongly agree. Lunch, this is lunch again. Regarding suggestions to improve lunch at the high school, again, it was very similar. It just kept the same line that they understand that it definitely impacts our ability to move students. There were really not many issues presented about lunch. Some comments about food choices, but more comments about a desire to stay outside for lunch as much as possible. I know of all the groups, the high school is utilizing outdoors for lunch more than the other schools. And I think the students are clinging as we are onto the nice weather days. So they're looking forward to that as a possibility. Focus group results about lunch. The students didn't have a problem with lunch. You know, they just talked about being outside if they could be. They didn't have a problem with lunch at this point. We really couldn't get a lot out of them about it. They felt it was safe. They didn't feel it was too bad. I was expecting them to have more input into that. Did you feel the same, Dr. Collins?
I do. I think they really appreciate being able to go outside for lunch. So I think it was something they really talked about. So it wasn't impacting them. They didn't.
Yeah, we might want to go back and ask them once they have to go inside if their minds have changed. Exactly. I think that was, a real huge factor in them feeling that lunch was pretty good. Yeah. During remote days, my child feels connected to his or her teacher. You can see it's definitely less than in-person days, but you know, that's how it's trending. It's a lot of neutral. Hours per day your student is spending on schoolwork on a remote day. Again, it's somewhat all over the place, but you can still get a trend for the overall building and where it is. During remote days, my child feels connected to his or her their teachers. Again, it's less than in the in-person days. If you could change anything about your students' remote learning workload, what would it be? So this was a little different than the other chart. Workload and assignments have been just right, 46.9%, still a very high percentage. They would have fewer assignments. So there's a little bit of trending, 39.2 is a pretty high percentage. So there's a little bit of trending towards feeling that some of the assignments might be maybe a little too much. So just an indication of where people are. Some of the themes, again, very similar to the middle school in different ways, but it can be intense for students. There were some comments that the workload was too heavy, other comments it was too light. They did talk about more feedback opportunities. Several comments regarding remote days being more effective than in-person days because of the emphasis on assessment during the in-person days. There was a clear theme in there, and I saw several times, and I think you did too, Dr. Collins, about families wanting what they would call more instruction during the in-person days in some of the high school contexts. It wasn't overwhelming, I want to be clear. It just was enough to have enough answers to create a theme. It wasn't like everyone was saying it. And the focus group results, this was a little surprising to me. And it was the case in both focus groups. Most of the students interviewed felt that remote learning was more effective than in-person learning because a good amount of the instruction was taking place during the remote days. Students felt remote Wednesdays were effective because all students were able to come together safely in a remote environment. They did talk about that, the ability for the two groups to get together. And I know our staff feels strongly about that. I'll get to that in a minute. Most students thought the workload was fair, but some mentioned they felt the amount of assignments were sometimes a bit excessive, which would actually fall very much in line with what their families were saying. So there's some communication going on there between the students and the families. TECA. So we sent a survey questions out to the families of TECA. And based on initial responses, I thought it was going to be a lot more negative than it was. It was very mixed. It had a lot of families saying the TECA was right for them, and you had some families who had some mixed feelings. There's definitely some that wished for more connectivity to other classes of students, feeling there is too strong a responsibility on the part of the parent to help their child in the TECA model. Differing opinions regarding workload and rigor. Some were feeling it was almost overly rigorous. Others were feeling that perhaps it wasn't rigorous enough. I would say more trending towards too rigorous, if anything. We have added some resources. We've added a liaison at all schools to better connect the students to Cohasset Public Schools. So the idea is we have a guidance counselor who'll be working with the TECA students to help assimilate them more into what the Cohasset experience is, getting them together as a team as well. Dr. Scollins has stepped up. I thank you, Dr. Scollins, for really becoming the coordinator for TECA, listening to parents, communicating with TECA, communicating back with parents. We have Lisa Radden, our new director of technology and digital learning, who's ready to assist parents if they have problems with the TECA model. And we continue to work closely with TECA to provide a strong model for our remote-only students. So the feedback here was better than I had thought. There is some room for growth, but we really feel adding that liaison is going to help connect.
Yeah, and parents did have some specific comments, and I'll get back to those families that had comments because they put their names in there. And they also, there'll be a directory. Not many parents signed up to be in a directory so that they could kind of communicate with each other, but I left it open so if there are parents out there that are in the TECA program, they can just fill it out so that I can connect them because they wanted that connection too.
So some other factors reviewed that I'm not presenting necessarily in depth here, but I wanted the committee to be aware of, and families, are transportation and bus routes. You know, we've tweaked them over the last few weeks to try to get them so that they're working at maximum efficiency and safety. I feel really proud about the work the bus drivers have done and our transportation supervisor. Student drop off and pickup, great job by the individual schools. We were finding that particularly Thursday and Friday, there was a great amount of traffic on Pond Street. So we're adjusting, we have adjusted, working with Cohasset Police Department. Our method of exiting, it's not really such an issue in drop off, but in pick up it is. So we now have all of our students and parents who are coming out of the high school driveway going left, and all of our parents who are picking up students in the middle school driveway, plus the buses going right. So it should separate them, although it might be a little tougher getting out at first for the high school, but it's still a much safer situation than clogging up 3A, which we don't want to do. You don't want to do that because then you have people taking right on the roads that kind of cut in between 3A and the school, and we don't want that. Boston student transportation, we've worked hard to make sure that's working well. The kids are getting here on time. They're getting they're getting back home on time. They have their own buses. That's something that I absolutely want to advocate for moving forward. They're having their own bus is such a great benefit and something they deserve. We are able to transport any student who's doing a sport or needs to be here for an activity. We have special arrangements made for those students, and we have the capacity to do that moving forward as well. So I'm happy with where that stands right now. Athletics, very proud of Steve Rotundi, our athletic director, and our coaches doing an excellent job keeping them socially distanced. Note to parents to please help us with those spectator situations. We're doing our best to keep our students socially distanced, and please model for them that as well. I implore you to do that because it really helps us with being able to keep school going as well. Food service, as you all know, we've created a method to have food ordered online. It's a much more efficient system than what we started with. And we're going to look at that in a little bit more depth because it's sort of new, but early reports are it's working well. Our deep cleaning protocols, we know now we can do it much quicker. Our office just was done. It still smells of the cleaner, but we know we can do it in an evening now as opposed to taking a full day. That was a big change for us. We had no idea what the cleaning protocol would entail with our deep cleaning and our electromagnetic static guns that we're using, and now we do. Special education, working with Barbara, and she's presented earlier in the previous meeting about some of the things she's working through with her team and helping our special education students. And then, as I noted in my newsletter, we have done work with the CTA, obviously Bala, who came in, an engineering company, did an independent HVAC and air change / airflow assessment. We were able to advocate with the help of the CTA for 170 portable air cleaners. They're on order and they're expected in a few weeks, and we will put them in our learning spaces throughout the district to help mitigate with air changes and also to help eliminate contaminants within the air. So all that's happening, and I feel is going to make all of these things are moving very well, and I think the HVAC or the airflow changes will help as the weather gets tough. So now on to our staff survey. We did have 142 responses, which is a very strong showing from our staff. You can see it's very split. I feel my students are having a valuable learning experience in the in-person days. You'll note that the percentages are a little higher here than they are when we get to remote, but they're high in both. So you note the highest categories here are strongly agree and agree. I feel connected to my students during in-person days. It's, again, you got 8%, I should say 88% or 80 something percent who are in the strongly agree or agree category. And this is in remote days. I feel my students having a valuable experience in remote days. It's still high, it's a little less. Here you can see the strongly agrees 9.2%, agree is 47.7%, and a higher degree of neutral. Doesn't mean it's bad, just means, it's maybe not, it's not ranked as high as the in-person experience for our staff. I feel connected to my students during remote days. Again, not as high as it was in the other chart, but you can see that still agree is still a strong percentage with a lot of neutral here. Student percentage completion of assigned remote work has been, and this is as a whole district, but you can see it's trending towards very good, 85 to 100%, or good, 70 to 85% of assignments. So, from all accounts, it looks like the work is just about right, and that the students are doing the work at a pretty good rate. So I think we get a good, some good indicators there that there are some things working. These are remote Wednesdays, and I should note that the chart is a little different here. The first question, how valuable are remote Wednesdays to the hybrid model? And this is something that's very important to staff, and we're going to let them talk about it in, I'm sure, a minute, but not at all is a 1, which you can see is very little, and then extremely is a 5. So 55.8% felt that the remote Wednesdays, as we have them set now, are extremely important. And then the workload for school, this scale is, let's see, it is too little to too much. And you can see the trending. I mean, a large amount, 45% feel that their workload for school is too much. You can see the way it's trending. Didn't have anybody say it was too little. You can see that. But I should say that this is these are two indicators that our staff is under a lot of stress, and these charts I think clearly show that, as do some of the comments on the survey. About the safety protocols, and you can see that although there's a strong degree of neutral, the vast majority of folks, or the majority of folks I should say, feel that either they agree or strongly agree that the protocols are working, although there is some room for improvement here. When asked about this, most of the comments reflected just enforcement of rules, but there were some cleaning comments, some things that we can definitely dig in and check on. And then there's the I feel supported by the district building leadership. It's a tough time. We appreciate that people feel mostly supported, but there's clearly some room for growth here. This is a tough time, and we're committed to working with our staff to help them and support them in ways that also help the students. So some of the staff survey information, just in general, 142 staff members responded, included teachers, ESPs, nurses, custodians, and cafeteria staff. Most staff believe the in-person days are valuable for students. Most staff believe the remote days are valuable for students. Student percentage completion of assigned work remote is generally good to very good. Teachers would like to see more in-person learning time for younger students. There's some differing feelings on how that could be packaged. You might hear some of that. Teachers would like more technology support and hardware to support remote learning. That was a clear trend, and something that we're going over with our new position, obviously Lisa Radden, Director of Technology and Digital Learning. And we're going to make sure that we hit the ground with that so that we can help people out from a systemic point of view and also from an individual point of view. There's a lot of growth that we need to work to do on that area to support staff. Teachers are spending many hours planning and creating lessons for in-person and remote days. It's absolutely clear they're doing Herculean work. Teachers use remote-only Wednesdays to connect with all students at the same time in Zoom, collaborate with other staff, plan and create lessons. Those came out as clear themes as to why they felt it was important. Also, it brings cohorts together, gets students on the same page, might allow students the ability to meet with multiple teachers. The majority of staff feel they are being supported by leadership. Majority of staff state they are overwhelmed with the creating in-person and remote lessons. That was an absolute trend. Most of them felt the safety protocols are working effectively, but we're certainly working to improve that. So some conclusions, and then I'll get into a few recommendations. Some conclusions based on all of this, as we look at it, is that our COVID-19 rates are increasing across the state. And although the rates are currently low in Cohasset, we have recently moved from the unshaded or gray to yellow category in the DPH metrics. So it's around us. Cases of COVID-19 have been low within the school community, undoubted. It's only been 2, and I say it's been 2. Should never say only before cases of COVID. From the student, staff, and family data, it is clear that more in-person instruction is paramount and desired by all. It was a clear trend. How it's packaged and how it works within the model is something we can talk about. Family, students, and most staff approve of the safety protocols and safety measures put into place within the schools. The majority of students are feeling supported coming into the buildings by the protocols and safety measures put in place. Students and families have had varying feelings regarding the efficacy of remote learning, but overall they feel it's going well. Staff feels overwhelmed by the work they are undertaking in creating the lessons. Staff has expressed a strong value in the remote Wednesdays for planning and for bringing cohorts together, and some of the other things I mentioned. So what I'd like to, I have 3 main recommendations here, and I did mention some of the things we'll be working on, but based on the data presented, it is recommended, I'm recommending, that we move towards having all students in the building an additional day, a Wednesday, alternating each week between cohorts. We know that the deep cleaning could happen on the evening between the cohorts. And basically, I just want to be very clear with where I've stood with this from the very beginning. It's essential to get our students back into the buildings if we can do so safely. It's important for their social emotional well-being. It's important for their learning. It's important for their families. It's important for the well-being of everything that is about education. And so I understand that we need to do some work to shift from the model we're in now to the model that I believe will be more effective for our students and more appropriate for our students. However, I looking at this data as the superintendent of schools, I am advocating for this. I know it's a discussion and I know we'll have some collective thoughts on it. I respect that. I deeply respect the staff, but I have to, in this particular case, promote this for the well-being of the students because I believe we can do it. It's recommended with this, however, that we provide the time for the staff, the leaders, the families, and students to plan for this change. It is indeed needed for time for us to adjust our practices and models to afford the students this independent in-person learning. I'm recommending it's a December 9th start, which allows us an equal amount of Wednesdays until the conclusion of the year for each cohort to be in there. It amounts to 12 each, which would be 12 days of school that are in person that these cohorts didn't have before. I think we can make that happen. And that's what I'm advocating for. And then I also want to recommend that when we do implement this, that we come back, just as we did here, after some weeks, whether it be 6 this time, I said 6, or maybe we can get a sampling from a shorter time, but that we come back and we talk about the progress and we make any needed adjustments as we continue to work with the association and our CTA. And I recognize that the school committee may be voting on this with knowledge that we have to continue to fulfill our bargaining obligations with the CTA. However, based on the data review, these are my conclusions and these are my recommendations. So at this point, I would turn it over to Chairman McClellan. Gee, I did it in an hour. I knew I could do it in an hour. I will turn it over to Chairman McClellan for discussion, and I'll stop sharing my screen so we can have a full screen when we talk.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Thanks very much for that very comprehensive overview and for all the work that went into putting that presentation together. I know how many hours went into that, and it was put together fairly quickly because we wanted to ensure we got a maximum, optimal participation on the surveys. So, having listened to your presentation, I know that that the faculty was interested in having a representative speak to some of the recommendations, and I believe that Mr. Erlinson, who is the president of the Cohasset Teachers Association, is that representative. I do see him as an attendee. I was wondering if you could promote him so that he could.
Absolutely. I'm going to promote
give that statement.
Bob Erlinson, president of the CTA, to the panelists right now. Here he comes.
All set there?
Hello, Bob. Welcome.
How you doing there?
Good evening, Mr. Erlinson. Welcome. It's my understanding you want to make a statement on behalf of the faculty?
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure.
First, I want to thank the school committee, superintendent, and parents, and the community for all that you have done over the past few months. All of us have had a very heavy burden to carry in reopening the schools, and our goals are identical in trying to create the safest and most successful schools we can. As the Cohasset School Committee reflects on the reentry to the public schools, the Cohasset Teachers Association would like to take the opportunity to add our voice to the public record and speak directly to the school committee and community. Having the students back in our classrooms is a true joy, and we are committed to helping create the safest and most successful classrooms and buildings possible. As a faculty and staff, we have met all requests set upon us by the district and school committee. We have done so professionally and with safety and the best interests of our students at heart. The recent collaboration with the district administration, school committee, and town to provide portable air cleaners to the classrooms has been a testament to our learning community's commitment to the student and staff safety, and we hope that will continue in the future. Most importantly, though, at this time, we're concerned over the possible loss of Remote Wednesday. And I have to take a little bit of an issue with the slide that says that all individuals are in favor of more in-person learning. The CTA and all teachers recognize that in-person learning is the ideal. For sure, it's the ideal. But from our survey results, 95% of our teachers were neutral or in favor of keeping the current Remote Wednesday. 5% were not. So that is by far not a majority. It's much than the opposite. Currently, at Deer Hill and Osgood, teachers are utilizing the Remote Wednesday to conduct critical meetings and develop in-person and remote plans. We are working tirelessly to develop remote learning plans that are both robust in nature and developmentally appropriate for young learners. We are spending hours creating videos and interactive Google Slides so that instruction can remain personal and accessible to our students. In addition, Remote Wednesday allows the entire class to safely be together as ELA and math content are introduced. In the middle and high school, we utilize Remote Wednesday to address the needs of our full classes. We also use it to introduce new content to all the cohorts, to review material from the previous week, conduct assessments, or to have discussions with all members of the class. We are continuously using this time to foster our virtual communities and relationships with our students, as is the only time we currently have to work with all of our students simultaneously. Teachers at all grade levels and content areas are constantly adapting our curriculum to meet the needs of our students while maintaining flexibility and creativity in our content delivery. We are concerned that any changes to our current learning model would necessitate recreating the many new systems routines that we have just recently adopted and are only now feeling comfortable with to successfully teach our students. The teaching and learning conditions under which we are operating are extremely challenging. With responsibility of developing, managing, and implementing curriculum for both students who are learning in person and remotely, we have been faced with a formidable task. The remote learning technology skill set, in combination with the concurrent management of an in-class and remote student participation, has required educators to shift and adapt to these significant challenges in order to help our students be successful. Additionally, the application of multiple lesson plans to simultaneous cohorts is extremely challenging to master. The level of stress that we as a faculty and staff members are experiencing is very concerning. This stress will only increase with the introduction of colder weather, which will lead to less outdoor activity and limit outdoor mass breaks. The cold and flu season and the current rise in COVID-19 cases across our learning community and the uncertainty of the future continue to exacerbate our already difficult situation and previously stated concerns. Without exaggeration, the mental and physical health of your faculty and staff is on the line here. As a result, the CTA wants to ensure that the school committee is aware of the needs of the district's educators. We request that these needs be taken into consideration in any discussion regarding changes to the current learning model. It is the position of the CTA that any alterations to the hybrid model be brought to the negotiation table to fully discuss the impacts of any such change. In addition, if the hybrid model is to be revised, many elementary staff have expressed interest in revisiting the cohort A for 2 days, then a remote clean day, and then the cohort B for 2 days, and instead maybe a 4-day-a-week half-day model that would have more continuity for their students. A strong majority of the elementary staff were in favor of such a move. Finally, as I've been talking to teachers and leaders in the other schools and districts, it's becoming clear that there's a second pandemic occurring, and that's one of teacher exhaustion spreading throughout the schools. Parents in attendance right now, if you could please reach out with a word of support for your child's teachers, I know they would appreciate it. We've been holding it together, and we've been very stoic in our approach to our teaching, but we could really use some help. Thank you again for all your support.
Thank you very much for that very important input. I don't know if it might be appropriate, because I know Mr. Erlinson won't, be around for the entire meeting. I don't know if anything he said, Mr. Erlinson, would you be willing to take any questions from the school committee members before you leave the meeting, or are you more comfortable with just making the statement and then leaving?
If I can answer a question without my consultation with negotiation committee, or whatever, I'll say so. But if anyone has any questions about our current social emotional state of the staff, I'd be willing to answer those.
Sure. Don't answer anything you don't feel comfortable answering. Any members of the school committee have any questions for Mr. Erlinson before he leaves? Mrs. St. Ange?
I just want to express my thanks. As a fellow teacher, I fully understand the level of exhaustion and effort that you are experiencing right now, and it's so much, and it's just, our kids are benefiting so much from all of you. So I truly thank all of you for what you are doing right now. It's a Herculean task for sure.
I've heard that word a lot the past few days.
Thank you, Mrs. St. Ange. Mr. Kearney?
Yes, I also want to express my gratitude as a parent and as a school committee member in knowing that our teachers really stepped up. It's a remarkable thing to see. And I just want you to know that we're there for you. We're in this all together. And, I just like to express that to the teachers, that we really, really are thankful and grateful.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Erlinson, I echo those comments, and I know that you personally, as well as the members of your executive committee on the CTA, have they go above and beyond, putting in extra hours and time in zealously representing and passionately representing your group and your faculty. And I do believe that deserves some public recognition for all of your effort, your extra efforts. And I personally am I witnessed that myself in the many meetings that we've attended together. So thank you for that, and everyone should be aware of Mr. Erlinson's dedication. And thank you for your participation in tonight's meeting and for making that and preparing that thoughtful statement. Thank you.
Thank you for the time and opportunity.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Having heard from the faculty representation, I think we'll move on to some public comments from members of the audience, members of the community. The first comment came in, and ladies and gentlemen, some of these may have been asked in the past, but I was waiting until Dr. Sullivan was finished with his presentation, and the CTA got to make theirs before we moved on. So I apologize if maybe some of them are after the fact. The first question, though, is from Patty Gillis of 492 Jerusalem Road. She asks, what about 2 weeks of virtual after Thanksgiving and Christmas? More than a few districts are considering this.
2 weeks of just want to make sure I understand, Mrs. Gillis, what she's saying. 2 weeks of virtual, meaning 2 weeks of remote learning for all after Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I can imagine that is for safety's sake, for making sure that, we do have the 14 days, which would essentially be quarantine between Thanksgiving and when we return, because of I would imagine the anticipated travel of some folks in the community.
I think that's what I'm saying, yes.
Yeah, and actually, I haven't considered that. It's a new world for all of us. I think it's an interesting thought. I try to react to what the data tells me at this time, based on where we are and what we're in need of in our community. And I do think it is in some, although, certainly there's communities around us that have higher rates. It's not a bad idea at all. It's just something I would need to explore a little more fully. Clearly, I'm trying to get students in person as much, but the caveat to that is in person safely. So if that in turn is a viable idea after some exploration, that would be something I'd want to talk over with the school committee. But I at this point, because of the work we've been doing with this, haven't considered that as an idea.
Okay. Moving on, the next question is from username lowercase s capital B. I do not have a name or an address. They ask, will Cohasset High School complete the state application for COVID testing in the schools that Governor Baker announced today?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that yet. So I feel I don't feel able to answer that. So I'd like to gather some more information before I can answer that. I haven't, I've been working straight through. I haven't been aware of any governor's press conference or announcement. So I wouldn't want to give information about something I haven't looked at fully. I apologize. I just don't know.
There's no apology necessary, Dr. Sullivan. I was on a meeting with Dr. Sullivan for most of the day today, and now we're back. And I know that he was preparing that presentation as well. So
I'm very intrigued. I'm intrigued. I'd like to hear what it is.
Well, what I think would be probably the appropriate course of action there is for that individual to follow up with you via email and keep the discourse going that way.
That would be great. And I'm going to look. Clearly, I'm going to look and get my facts together. But
Yeah.
But in that way, they can identify themselves to you, and you'll be able to discuss it with them.
It takes a village for sure. Dr. Scollins, did you have some information on that?
I did, because it did come out today, and we were in a meeting. There was a webinar just to kind of explain it out, but we hadn't had a chance to do it. So I do have a little information. That was it. And then
this is on the testing kits and the.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to explore it more.
Yeah, we couldn't attend the webinar today. Yeah.
Okay, those are all the questions that have been posted. So wait a minute, hold on. Miss Jessica DiLorenzo of 132 Chief Justice Cushing Highway asks, if a district makes the decision of remote learning between Thanksgiving and the holiday break without data to support a closure based on the stoplight metrics and other data means, DESE has stated that district will be subject to an audit In other words,
That is
Jesse is
true.
not in support of this without data regarding COVID cases to support the closure.
That is true.
Yeah, Mrs. Di Lorenzo is absolutely correct. And clearly Mrs. Gillis's thought, which was a good one, and it just caught me a little, that's correct. So we would run into issues with that. Thank you from a fellow educator. That's absolutely correct.
Carol LaFond of 15 Orchard Street. I don't know if it is or not, but 15 Orchard anyway, is what she writes as the address. Thanks for all of your efforts. What are the concrete next steps to improve remote learning?
So Dr. Scollins, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we're lucky we have Lisa Radden, our new Director of Technology and Digital Learning, and her and I are working hand in hand to look at what, what's happening in the classroom. She's actually been visiting all the buildings, talking to teachers, talking to principals to see kind of what are those needs and how can we support teachers, because, this is new for them. Mr. Erlinson is correct. This is, this was a new way of teaching. And so we need to be looking at how we're doing it and what's appropriate for kids, and what do we do to increase engagement for students, but at the same time balancing what's appropriate for them. Certainly putting a young child on a Zoom all day long isn't appropriate for a child. So how do we balance that so that there is some sort of synchronous and probably more asynchronous in the remote? But we want to look at all of that and look at how teachers are implementing those pieces. So they've had some nice PD in the beginning of the year, and they've really been working really hard. I've had the pleasure of seeing a lot of what they're doing in their Google Classrooms. But that's why we did the survey. We wanted to see where things were at all around, and to see what students had to say, see what parents and staff have to say about it. And the staff are working so very hard to create those remote lessons. So, but we're still trying to figure that all out, but we're a work in progress, and we'll continue to work with our teachers. We have professional development in December, and the focus will be technology based on, the different age groups and what the needs of the staff are. So Ms. Radden and I are trying to figure that out now.
And Mrs. LaFawn, you should feel free to continue any sort of individual discussions with Dr. Scollins or Dr. Sullivan, or Lisa Radden.
Mhm.
And if you feel like you have any specific suggestions or desire any specific, answers to any specific questions in the future regarding that issue.
And absolutely talk to your child's teacher and principal, because they're intimately involved in what's happening. They are attending common planning time every week with their staff to see how they can support them.
Thank you, Dr. Scollins. Okay, those are all the questions from members of the community at this time. So I'd like to open it up to deliberations of the school committee. Any points of discussion any of you would like to raise at this time? Any questions of Dr. Sullivan concerning his presentation? Now would be the time to discuss any and all points, his recommendations. We'll go as we usually do in alphabetical order. Mrs. Caleri.
Thank you. Thank you. I know all three of you have been putting in some long hours, especially this week. And so thank you very, very much for all of your hard work. I do have a couple of questions. I'm wondering whether you have gathered insight from building leadership on what their impressions are of the experience for students up to this point.
I think the building leadership is extremely proud of their teachers. I think that they've expressed that time and time again, how proud they are of the work they put in. It's a work in progress for all of us. We all set out with the idea of trying to get back as many kids in person as safely as we can. I think that they've hit a point where they think things are going well. But right now, my feedback is that they're proud of their staff. They do recognize that their staff has a great amount of stress on them. But it's a push and pull between trying to help our students in as much as we can, and in turn families as well. And also, make sure we're supporting our staff. So I think, speaking on behalf of the leaders, I think they're feeling a good amount of stress too, because they're working tirelessly, just like their teachers are. And quite frankly, just like Dr. Scollins is, and other members on this call, including Mr. Erlitzson, to try to do what's right for the students. So a little bit of everything there, Ashley, really.
Thank you. Adjustment counselors, have they weighed in at all on their thoughts?
I haven't spoken specifically to adjustment counselors. They were involved in the survey, in regards to students they're supporting. Barbara, do you want to mention? You would have a better
Sure.
view of that than I would.
Yes, yes. So the school adjustment counselors and I have been chatting informally about this as we have our meetings and as they reach out to me for things. I know that, for example, at the secondary level, they asked for some materials to put together some calming boxes for kids, similarly in a way that they would do in a non-remote year, but also, to have some extras around for things that might pop up. I've not heard from any of them that they are experiencing, any undue degree of referrals or anything like that. But I know that what they are doing is they are equally interested in supporting not just students, but also the staff, and kind of putting out tips and tidbits of kind of, how to keep yourself healthy, how to, keep your equilibrium, things that you can do during the day, along the lines of, some deep breathing, some, yoga poses, things like that, to kind of keep yourself going and to really promote self-health so that they can really be there for all of our students.
Thank you, Barbara. So wondering if there is, my daughter, as we know, well, as those of us on the screen know, is full remote. So I don't have the direct experience of having an elementary age student in the hybrid model. So I'm just wondering, is there small group stuff happening during remote work at the elementary level, or is it mostly full class stuff? Do you know?
Leslie, Dr. Collins?
Yes, there is some small group that's happening really with our math and reading specialists. And we also have some Curry College students who are what we're calling educational buddies. And they are under the supervision of some teachers and then our reading specialists. So they are delivering small group instruction on those remote days. And I think teachers are doing some on that remote Wednesday, but I do think the majority is from our, from our math and reading specialists.
Okay.
Yeah, math and reading specialists I know are doing a lot of
Yeah.
Work like that.
Going with the elementary age kids theme, I will, I think it was suggested at some point, perhaps considering a 4-day half-day model. I would strongly advocate in opposition of that. I feel like that's just not the way that I would like to see us go. And then I do have a question about TECA specifically. When did the TECA liaisons start?
So,
Well, I should stand corrected. I thought they had started. Have they not started yet?
so we
Dr.
met last week and they're supposed to reach out this week to
Okay, okay.
Okay.
So
All right.
if they haven't, they will. We have another training again tomorrow, so from TECA, but they are supposed to reach out. But if a family, please let me know if you haven't heard. I do think I sent an email out with the people that were your liaisons, so you could certainly reach out to them. I know that some have been doing that already. I got a couple emails, but if you haven't, you can reach out to me or feel free to reach out to the person who I said was for your school. That's okay too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Good, thanks.
You're muted, Craig.
Hey, Craig, I think that's me, right?
It is. Just hold on 1 second. Mrs. Clear, do you have any thoughts though on the recommendation of Dr. Sullivan in terms of what your position is on that, Mrs. Cleary?
Oh, sorry. I would, if that's what Dr. Sullivan thinks is the next appropriate step, I see that in the data, it seems that our community would like more in-person time, and if we can provide that safely, I would be in favor of doing that.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Colery. Mr. Kearney.
Yes, again, I'd like to thank all the teachers and I'd like to thank the administrators. I think you guys are doing a great job. And thank you, Craig, as well. Yeah, I want to echo what Barbara was saying about the wellness of the teachers. I think that's really important that we promote wellness within the community. I know that there are some resources for the teachers to mitigate some of that stress. I know that we have a town wellness program for the teachers, correct, Dr. Sullivan?
There's a town wellness program, and there's also there's various localized folks. We have Nina Berkowitz, for instance, does some yoga and meditation work with some of the high school, middle school staff. But you know, these are resources that we can invest in more, as I'm hearing that to be a loud and clear need. So I'd be, you know, really willing to work closely with CTA leadership and any teacher to get as much, you know, as many resources as we can for the staff. So I hear exactly what you're saying.
Right. And I also want to mention the fact that, you know, we are very, very lucky again to have the teachers that we have and provide them, like, everyone's going to have a different story, correct? I mean, we have to take this as one story at a time and one teacher or student at a time for their different issues. And I think as long as we address those issues with the teachers and we give them, you know, if they're burnt out or they need someone to talk to. And, you know, what I've been hearing throughout the conversation is that these resources, we have the resources. And that said, again, I'm very concerned about the teachers and I'm very fortunate and grateful. And you know, and also too was on the parents and the kids, you know, they're stressed out too. Let's talk about them for a second. You know, the kids are, they're better off in learning school. I mean, we're taking a lot of the fun out of school, you know, and when we have, you know, a Monday that has a holiday or a Friday that has a teacher's day, now we only have the kids in one day during the week, right? I mean, I'm very hopeful that we can continue and open up slowly like we've been doing. And I think this is just one more step of getting our kids back to school. And I just want to say that I'm strongly in support of opening up that Wednesday and look and see and how it works and continue with this communication. And just know that, you know, again, this isn't going to happen till December 8th. You know, we still have a lot of time. And to be honest, we're only talking about 2 Wednesdays, and then we got Christmas break. So it really shouldn't be a burden to have 2 more days. My personal experience is, you know, I really like to see my kids in school. I think it's the best way they learn. I'm also, I do see this remote working. I mean, I see my kids, there's a classroom going on in every room. And yeah, it seems to be, again, the teachers are doing the best, the kids are doing the best, and the parents are doing the best. So I just would like to say that I'm in full favor and grateful again to the teachers, but I also think that the kids should go back to school.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Kearney. Mrs. Marr.
Thank you. I'll echo what everyone has said. I'd like to thank Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Scollins, their leadership team, and Mr. McClellan for all the work in the survey and the data. It's refreshing to see the high number of responses compared to surveys we would send out 2, 3, 4 years ago, where if we could get 100 folks to respond, we would consider that a windfall. So that's a testament to, I think, your communication, your transparency, and your overall desire to do what's right by the students of Cohasset. And then I'd like to thank the parents and the staff that contributed to the survey. Without your input, we wouldn't even be having these conversations, and would be, you know, talking about decisions without the data. And we are a data-driven group, and it's important to have it. I was, I thought it was remarkable the level of resiliency that our students demonstrated in the focus group comments. I find them, their comments to be that they're very adaptable to what's going on and very candid and very honest. And sometimes I think our kids handle things better than sometimes we do as parents. I think we need to keep tapping that student voice because I think they really give us, their honest assessments. Since this all started, there's been one thing that's been consistent, and it's getting the kids into school and getting them into school safely. And we've demonstrated that we can do that. And now we have an opportunity to get kids into school even more. I mean, eventually utopia is full-time every day. And I think we need to continue to push that and utilize these Wednesdays, because when we started, as Dr. Sullivan said, we had no idea how long the intensive cleaning would take. And now we've got several weeks under our belt. We know exactly how long it takes and what needs to get done. And I think that opens up time for learning and time for kids to be back in school. So I am in favor of that. I would just maybe pose a question. Would a half-day Wednesday maybe accomplish the same thing of getting kids back in school and allowing more time, the time that the teachers have expressed? Because I do recognize, and appreciate the stress that they're under and coming up with lesson plans. And I don't know if it was something you might have thought about, Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, actually, yes. We are going to have to make some changes to make sure that we fulfill our contractual and so needed obligation of providing common playing time at the elementary level. So it could be an hour shorter. The day could be an hour shorter or an hour and a half shorter, depending on the buses and what we need to do. But I'm absolutely amenable to talking about that and working that through with staff to create the best situation. As in my opinion, I've already expressed it, as long as we can get our students in as much as safely possible, which I believe has now increased to be that Wednesday. So we do have to be thoughtful of their planning and timely in that, based on the fact that I've advocated for this shift because of the good virtues of having kids in school. Right. But yeah, it's something that we can definitely discuss and we have thought about, and clearly we have to think about more because we do have to provide that planning time for them. And we should.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Mrs. St. Ange.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Marr, you and I are really on the same wavelength tonight. I have the exact same note. Coming to this as a parent, I think, oh my gosh, get the kids in school as much as possible. In-person learning days are such happy, easy days at our house. We definitely feel the joy of joining our teachers at school. That being said, as a teacher, I fully understand and appreciate what so many teachers in our district are going through. I'm in a different district, but I'm a teacher during this pandemic. So I happen to teach in a school in which we do the half-day model, and I would recommend against it. I'm wondering if this is kind of a grass is always greener in the other model situation. I don't think that splitting AM and PM is gonna solve our problems. That's just my humble opinion, but it's an awfully short time once you get in and get out. And I think that getting into, a more quality time with a full day is just a better quality of a school day. I just am really concerned about teachers having that prep time, looking at the remote work that's being provided. I'm only seeing what's provided at the elementary level, but the number of Loom videos and the slideshows and the materials and the lessons that are planned, take hours to prepare, and I would not want to take that time away from teachers. So that's where I agree with Mrs. Marr, is I'm wondering if it could be an early release Wednesday so that the teachers could have that prep time in order to be preparing those materials while they are like on the clock at school. I think many of us are working well into the night these days, and it's nice to provide in-school hours to do that. Another question I have is, currently on Wednesdays, the kids get to touch base at the elementary level with their homeroom teacher. So I'm just wondering, I guess that would be taken away. The teacher couldn't be in two places at once. They couldn't be teaching in class and then also doing the morning meeting and afternoon meeting with the kids. I just know that mine look forward to that a lot. They love the Wednesdays when they get to see their own teacher on Zoom. That is extremely meaningful to them, and having their whole class with whom they have, spent last year and now this year. So it's nice to see those kids all together in one place. So I don't know if that would be possible to do meetings together still, with some kids in school and some kids out of school. I guess I can pause to allow time to answer. Sorry.
Well, that's the detail. Those are both details we have to work out. I'm certainly amenable to striking a balance between getting our kids in as much as possible and providing the needed prep time for our teachers. And the other matter at hand is, we haven't advocated at the elementary level for much of a synchronous remote model, where I should explain that, where we have teachers teaching to students in front of them and also live streaming to students at the same time. I think we can understand the spirit of it and try to create something that might be mutually agreeable to provide some of that for them. And I think that's some of the work we can do in the weeks to follow.
And if we follow up to when you're talking about the formation of how of the slide decks and all those things, we're going to work with Ms. Radden to really look at how can we streamline that process for staff, so that maybe there's multiple templates and things that exist, so that would cut down on them having to actually create some of those kind of template format pieces, and they can just drop things in. So it's much quicker and more efficient for them. So I think, that point is well taken. Teachers are spending an enormous amount of time, and rightly so. But so we'd like to figure out ways to streamline that for them, for sure.
Another question I have is just, I guess I'm hopeful that our community will continue to stay vigilant and keep numbers low. I worry though, as we get into the colder months and windows are closed and people are inside, and I'm curious, if we'd build in some sort of, I guess, stopgap, like what if we get close to December 9th and numbers aren't looking so good? Do we have kind of an if-then statement that says, actually, it's not going as well now?
Well, I think we'd have to look at the numbers and follow the state's guidance, which is really to look at how the numbers are in the schools. That's an important factor. It's not necessarily just predicated on what color we're in, what code we're in. We really have to look at it through the lens of the schools. That's explicitly been explained to us by the commissioner. And I don't know that they're connected. I think, we want to try to push our kids in as much as possible. But if we hit a point where we had to go full remote, we'd go full remote. I'm pushing for this because, obviously the rates are in a good spot, but our safety protocols are also working. So if those protocols were breaking down within our buildings and we were having more cases happening within our buildings, clearly we'd be backing it up. We should be. But right now, we're not in that spot. So it's going to be, I guess, a kind of a holistic approach to all this. So I would think, whether we went with alternating Wednesdays or didn't, would be in that situation where if our rates got to a point. So I don't know that they're really that connected.
Okay. All right. I just want to thank you for all of the reaching out you've done to the community. I feel like you continue as a team to seek out the voice of the community and to represent it in your reports. And I really appreciate that. And I support the idea of adding time to our children's in-school learning, just with kind of taking into consideration the questions I asked. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. St. Ange. My thoughts on this are that it's a really difficult issue given the faculty's apprehension about this. I've been just intimately involved with the efforts to the outreach efforts that the leadership team has made to ascertain what the teacher's position is and the staff member's position is on the current circumstances. And as whisperings grew around what modifications might be made about what their position would be on the deletion of the remote Wednesdays in the current model. And the teachers are very, very upset and stressed out and anxious about this. And it's not something to be discarded or taken lightly, because they are obviously the ones providing the education product to our children. And if they're not in a good headspace, that's going to likely interfere with their ability to effectively deliver that product. And then you look also at, their own mental health and the desire to have all members of our school community enjoying themselves and in a positive social, emotional space. And so it's a really important consideration. However, I don't think that consideration for me outweighs the interests of the children, the students. To me, I don't think it's deniable. It really is irrefutable that in-person instruction is the best instruction for children. And if we can give more of that, I think it's incumbent upon us to at least try. And I think it's possible. I think that it's especially possible if we roll it out in sort of a delayed response, and we roll it out at the timeline that Dr. Sullivan recommends. And I think in that manner, it can be very purposeful and deliberate, and it can take into consideration the various concerns expressed by Mr. Erlinson tonight and by the various members of the faculty that I've spoken with in my travels. I'm looking at the data that was collected, and I think that a lot of the themes around what we can do to improve the district, I think, are answered by more in-person learning. Things like more feedback opportunities, things like more connectivity to teachers. I think that these themes that you see, screen time and synchronous instruction being too, anxiety inducing for the kids of certain age groups, these are all answered with more in-person instruction. And as Mrs. Marr stated, that is our goal, and we can't lose sight of that goal. And we may be obstructed to an extent given the state of the pandemic, but in so much as we're able to, I think we should strive to get the children in school as much as possible. And, frankly, I'm glad that the results of the survey show that, people generally feel like things are going okay. I think that may be a product of people very thankfully understanding the very difficult circumstances that this leadership team has been placed in. I really commend them on doing what they've done under very difficult, if not impossible, circumstances. But frankly, and to be candid, as an early elementary parent, I am not happy with the current education that my daughter is getting. I don't think that that's anyone's fault. I think it's more a product of the circumstances. It's frustrating to me because I don't think there's any automatic answer to it. But I think that one good answer to it is more in-person instruction. My daughter is, she's not too different from her father in that, she's no valedictorian, she's no pro athlete. But what she is she's a really kind, interesting, creative person who is generally happy and loves school. And she does not love school right now. And that's a very difficult circumstance, because I think it is just reflective of the fact that she's just not getting enough of what kids in that age group really need. And I understand from looking at the data that as the age group in the as you increase in developmental maturity, the students seem to be more resilient and accommodating of the remote instruction. And that's really good. And I'm glad that that's happening. We've gotten some really good feedback. I mean, the high school is at the point where they're preferring remote Wednesdays to in-person instruction. However, I find that just as troubling, because I want a high school kid to be really engaged in the in-person learning, really looking forward to getting back into school, to having that, student to student, student to teacher, critical discourse, open, engaged thought about the materials that they've sort of educated themselves about independently, and sort of bringing that together in the classroom. They should not be looking, our district's children should not be looking forward to watching a computer screen. That's absolutely unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And the way that we solve that is by getting them back to the more normal circumstance. So for me, it's really difficult, because I know how hard the teachers are working. I see the stress is real. It's palpable in a number of different ways, and it's not feigned, and it's real, and they're immersing themselves in this, and they're giving all of themselves to it. But I think that if we as a district work with them and collaborate in furtherance of our bargaining obligations, but also just in furtherance of our overall mission as a district, to outfit them with everything they need and help, as Dr. Scollins cited one, really cool example, I think, of creating templates for their remote instruction and their remote lessons that will hopefully cut down time and increase efficiency in preparation of lessons. Things like that, I think, are solid answers to these very real problems posed by the faculty. I do not, however, personally feel that the stress of the faculty, while very important, outweighs, in my opinion, the importance and the necessity of in-person learning. And so for that reason, I also am in support of the recommendations of Dr. Sullivan. Before I ask for any motion or any further comments from the school committee, there are two more comments that came in that I just want to read, so we can ensure that everyone's allowed to participate in the process. Laura Soderberg of 16 Black Horse Lane asks, would you consider pairing up technology-capable support individuals with teachers/departments to assist them in creating things like multimodal slides / interactive instructional content to help them in those areas? Should they not have strong skills in those areas? Freeing teachers up to focus and spend time on student interactions. There might be volunteers in the community willing to help out. Dr. Sullivan or Dr. Scollins, would we consider this?
Yeah, absolutely. But I also want to advocate for, we just, with the committee's permission and leadership, we're able to bring on Lisa Radden, our Director of Technology and Digital Learning, a brand new position. That's her job. That is exactly why we have her here. And she's already asking the right questions and talking to the right people. And we see that need very loud. We hear it very loud and clearly in the survey. And extending that to some support group within the community is even better. So yeah, that's another thought for our, we have a digital learning committee too, that it needs to resurface and start joining forces to help with this as well. So yep, absolutely, Ms. Soderberg, that's a great suggestion. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Dr. Scollins.
No, I think that's great. And Ms. Radden comes to us with lots of connections outside of here. And she's already made some connections for me with some people that she worked with in the past, where we're going to look at some things around individualized learning and some other things. So I do think that we have some nice resources. I'm very excited that Ms. Radden is here with us.
And we also, remember, we do have Cassie O'Brien, who's also a fabulous technology person down at the elementary schools. So we have a good team there now to really help with, to take some of the burden off of the teachers for creating what are pretty amazing lessons, and I know they're spending a lot of time on them. The ones I've seen have been impressive, and I think we need to alleviate some of that time from them.
Absolutely.
That is an awesome suggestion, Mrs. Soderberg, and I think that'd be a really cool way to involve the community, you
Yeah,
know, even further
agreed,
in the
Lieutenant.
school district. So let's look into that more. Next question is posed by one of our valued faculty members, Ms. Deininger. She asks, if the Wednesday changes to an in-person day, what is the administration's plan for planning and creation of in-person or remote lessons? I think Dr. Scollins, you were touching on that earlier.
Right. Certainly, we're looking for resources to help to streamline things, but I think also talking about what that day is going to look like, and you know, how long is our Wednesday day going to be? I think, you know, we already had a little bit of discussion about that, because we have to make sure that common planning time is in there. And I agree, we have to really be thoughtful about making sure that people have time to plan in order to, you know, in order to be able to provide what they need to provide. So I think, you know, we're going to work together to figure this out.
And we have some time built in to do that if we follow Dr. Sullivan's timeline,
Exactly.
which hopefully will provide ample opportunity to do so.
Right.
Okay, Mrs. St. Ange, yes.
I'm just curious about is it the Skipper School where our teachers' students attend?
Mhm.
Is that currently running on Wednesdays or no?
No,
No.
it's not. And it would be my thought to increase that, and
Mhm.
that's something we'll have to discuss and perhaps negotiate, because there is a memorandum of agreement on that, but I would certainly want to provide that for them. And we can, you know, talk about that and what that constitutes as we move forward. And December 9th gives us a little time to do that as well. And I mean, talk to the CTA in regards to that.
Right. It
Great,
also
yeah.
impacts our before and after school programming,
Mhm.
right? Yep. So that would also be impacted, and because currently it doesn't run on Wednesdays, but certainly
Yeah.
would work on that too.
And just remember, like, our goal, this is how we started, and our goal was that if things were moving well, we were gonna get kids in more. So these are problems that, you know, I anticipated having. I mean, I knew and I view them as okay problems to have, because it means we're moving towards a more in-person model, which I think is very valuable.
Yeah, I'd much rather be having these problems than other problems. So
Yeah,
just
and
making sure that,
those problems could come, but right now it's where we are, and
yeah.
we do want to get kids in.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that piece was being considered. And I know that you guys are always considering so many facets of what's going on, but it's just, you know, that childcare piece is a big deal. And we had a lot of discussion about it before. So if we're adding or altering the model, just making sure that the childcare element is considered as well.
Yes, I would be committed to that.
Okay, any further comments from the members of the school committee? Right, seeing none, I would ask if there is a motion on the floor. At this time, this motion would be subject to our ongoing collective bargaining obligations to the CTA. And those obligations are, they do continue to be carried out and fulfilled. Those discussions are ongoing and have been since before the start of the school year, but subject to those obligations, is there a motion on the floor to accept and implement the recommendations made by Dr. Sullivan tonight, in that remote Wednesdays be converted to alternating in-person days commencing on December 9th of 2020?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Kearney. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Caleri. All in favor, please indicate so in roll call. Alphabetical order. Mrs. Caleri,
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. Dr. Sullivan, that motion unanimously passes, so we would respectfully ask you to implement that change as recommended.
Thank you all, and thank you everyone who participated in the conversation and the thoughtful approach of everyone as we move forward to do the best we can in this really difficult situation. So, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the, this is a special meeting, so that was the only item in the superintendent's report. I don't believe there is any finance update that I know of. Ms. Owen, is there anything you need to share with the committee? Okay, seeing none, moving on. Are there any school committee comments or communication at this time? Any points of discussion that you want to raise? Knowing, or excuse me, understanding that we do have a regular meeting scheduled next Wednesday.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just
Yes.
wanted to comment that we do have a capital budget meeting coming up for capital budget requests. Just want everybody, we all know that. I just know that, like the community to know that we're having some capital budget request meeting November 2nd, correct? 4th? Is it-
Yeah, we're having a subcommittee meeting on Monday at 4:30 on Zoom to go over the capital budget list. Mrs. Owens has circulated the list, so we're just going to start a review process.
Thank you, Mrs. Owens, by the way.
Okay. No one else? Moving on then to approval minutes. We do not have any minutes to approve. We will be approving minutes at the next regularly scheduled school committee meeting on November 4th, 2020. No follow-up and updates, no topics unanticipated by chairman in the 48 hours in advance of the meeting. No reason I know of to move into executive session at this time. And so with that, is there a motion on the floor to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Caleri. Is there a second?
Second.
Second made by Mrs. St. Ange. Second, excuse me, by Mrs. St. Ange. All in favor in roll call? Mrs. Caleri,
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
You.
Thank you.
Have a
Yeah,
great
bye.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Aye.